Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys had an amazing Thursday today. Finally, things are getting a little bit hot again out there. Today was still a little bit funky. We're going to run through it all. It was a much better day today than yesterday. We're seeing a lot better price action after that big move on THAR yesterday. So let's go ahead and break it all down. Today had a few good trades. PTIX was the main runner. We had GXAI, THAR, Velo, AMD, and APM. Now, I'm going to walk through it all here step by step for you. Break down sort of what I saw out there today, what I took, what I didn't take, and there's actually a very valuable piece involved here as well, where we got to look back at conviction, why you can't force conviction, and the dangers of forcing conviction. So they started out, and I'm looking back in pre-market, and we got APM setting up back here this morning. And APM and we have a pretty interesting history. So back in 2020, about 5 years ago, I traded this thing, and I got stuck in a nasty halt down with a good bit of share size and ended up knifing 50% out of the halt, and I lost about $30,000. It was a pretty significant loss back then on APM. And so there's this sort of weight overhead with APM that definitely plays a major role. And I tried to play it today. I tried to like it today, but I just didn't like how it was trading. But even then, I always have that weight on my shoulders where back then I was, 21 years old. I had one of my best months ever back then, and I also had one of my biggest losses ever back then too. And so it's one of those things where you have that weight overhead, and I really wanted to like this today. But I saw this, and it said it had a 3 million share float, and I'm like, it doesn't look like it's got a 3 million share float. I mean, all this through here looks so heavy, so thick, and I just had a hard time playing it. And then back here, I tried to play it into the bell. We had this sort of ascending channel taking it up into market open, and I was trying to look for the move here off these pullbacks to get the retest of the highs. Now, I cut it here for break even because I just didn't like how it was trading. Level 2 got kind of stacked as well. Then out of market open, we see it flush off this previous low from pre-market, start to accumulate off the lows. I took it for a little entry to see if we couldn't get a reversal back up through these highs. Again, we saw it hesitate, and again, I took a little paper cut here, went ahead and cut this for a really minuscule loss, and went ahead and sat back. Now, I tried to play it again later in the morning, and looking back in hindsight, man, I wish I would have liked this thing. But again, it's one of those things that's very hard. You know, like I said, my past experience with the stock, not to mention how this thing was trading this morning as well. It looked really, really good. We had this confluence, this previous area of liquidity formed after market open where we break above, we pull back, and we sort of use this past area of supply as our entry criteria. This becomes an area of demand. And so I'm taking these pullbacks through here for the room back higher for the breakout and ended up making a massive move. But I went ahead and cut it for small profit because, again, I just didn't like it. And I was like, you know, those things. Because this thing knifes here, 3 cents, nice off the high. And so I'm just so concerned here that I'm just going to get absolutely wrecked back to VWAP here and going to cost me. So yeah, I didn't play that too well this morning. So in any case, that was APM. Moving along into the good stuff, though. PTIX and GXAI. We'll start with GXAI. This is also on last night's watch list. And this thing looked pretty dang good today. Now, I didn't really like it all through here. This thing was so spready. It looked like crap, very low volume. And so while I'm over there playing my PTIX earlier, you know, I ended up missing this entry here, but even then it was a bit lower volume. So I was sort of leaving it alone. But it was a great look. And this was on last night's watch list for the break here of, and I'll actually show you how this was on the watch list last night. And it was a pretty good one today. And I wish we could have got a lot more out of this. I was watching it today off of 170, you can see here, and it ended up making a really nice move. But, you know, I'm really getting on this. We didn't really have any volume until we actually got up here into the twos, and I still played it really, really well. And so what we actually had happen here is we actually saw it put in place a bit of a range, which I love. So we see it make this first leg to the upside, pulls back to VWAP, finds a buyer, and heads back up into the highs. This puts in place a range because now we identify that we have sellers off the highs, we have our range identified overhead, and we have our level of support identified to the downside. So we have an actual way of, you know, let's just look for pullbacks on this because we know exactly where our relevant range is. We know exactly where relevant support is right beneath price. We have a range right above. Like, we just have a clear zone here to trade out of. And so I'm able to take these pullbacks off moving averages fairly well. You can see here we have these 2 grabs off the high where we can then use that for an entry. And you can see right here, I take the dip out of this past area of supply. This becomes an area of demand. And again, I'm able to play it back up into the high range where we have, again, sellers identified here. So we have sellers off these previous highs, double top formed off the high, selling back up into these highs, and this rinse and repeat. So you can see here again, price pulls back out of this past area of liquidity. And again, I take a reentry after we confirm again. Take a reentry, confirm again, and again, what do? I sell back up into this past area of supply, as you can see here. So entry off the pullback out of this previous area of demand, sell back up into previous supply. And so these ranges are super, super fruitful. So what I was looking for here is I really wanted to see this get breaking up through this high, because if it did, you'd have an amazing setup here to take a bit of a pivot higher. But obviously we didn't get that today. So, you know, really, really 4 wins on it. And that was that with GXAI. But very, very clean range setup. Doesn't get much easier than that. Now, moving right along to the best one of the day on PTIX. And I say best one of the day, it was a little bit choppy. But nonetheless, traded really, really well. Now, we had some good stuff here, where this really was one of the leading gappers into the open today, and one of the cleaner ones out of the open, because we had, I mean, APM was knifing out of the bell. We had AEMD, which was kind of gross out of the bell as well. I tried to play it on the VWAP, and I took it for break even. And everything, even THAR, THAR was, again, look at this, nasty moving. So I played this back in pre-market going into the bell too, see if we couldn't get a pop at the open. And this thing just, I mean, look, the rug gets pulled. And so we have all of this action happening out there where you have these knives just across the board. And so I think that really, you know, had an effect on price action today, because just like me, I see THAR knife, I see, you know, everything else sort of knife. I'm like, all right, do I really want to go out here and try to get aggressive today? And the answer to that question was clearly no. So you have to do what's right. You know, you've got to do what's right. You can't go around, you know, trying to make something happen where there's nothing to make happen. You know, see these knives happening left and right, and what I see is something stand out here, and it was PTIX. And so while everything else is knifing, PTIX is breaking up through VWAP here. And I missed the first entry. I really wanted to hear off of VWAP, but I missed it. It is what it is. Waiting for more confirmation because we've got knives across the board. And so once this does get up into this previous high, you can see right here, we have this previous high form from pre-market. I'm actually able to trade that fairly well. You can see once it actually broke over that high, I took a nice pullback using this past area of supply as my entry criteria. Take a look at this. Price breaks above, pulls back, and able to use that literally to a T for an amazing entry opportunity here. Now, I traded that really, really well and played those pullbacks there off the 90 MA from 419 back to 440. Again, using this simple range here. Look at this. Wicks off the high, signaling sellers, and then again played it off the highs from pre-market. You have a nice range put in place there to play, and then it rejects, and then this thing starts to knife. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So now the knives come here too. And so then PTIX knives from 437 all the way to 390 for a 40-cent move to the downside. And so now I'm really like, all right, well, now this thing's going to start knifing too. And so because of it, obviously, I'm not chasing this knife. You know, in 2020, this was a good entry opportunity off the highs from the open, but I didn't take it just because, again, everything else was knifing. And I'm like, if this thing is next, I don't want to be stuck in a halt down. So they're waiting for confirmation, because you look at the daily time frame, we had the 200 moving average sitting right there at 490. So we've got the 200 moving average sitting there at 490. So then it's like, okay, well, now what do I do from here? We break up through the high, we pull back, we start to accumulate these buyers here underneath, what, 480? And so it keeps on pulling back, finding a big buyer, finding a big buyer. And so I try to take it here for the break to the new high, and I get a little bit of a break, but overall kind of break even here. And same story over here as well. But where this actually gets a little bit interesting is, then again, I understand now we have this range put in place again. So take a look at this. We've got this, again, low, low. So we've got these lower lows formed. We see price knife, try to break beneath this trend we've got formed here. And then a buyer steps back in and reclaims. And so what do? I take the entry, risking this past low right there, and I'm able to grab it back up in the top of its range. Again, trading a range here. Look at this. And so I actually was able to play it here. You can see from 475 all the way back to $5 a share, playing it back up into the top of its range. This is one of the biggest trades of the morning. It doesn't look like it, but it's one of the biggest because we had the lack of risk to the downside. But it means I was able to take a good bit of share size. And so this thing was pretty good. And then it tries to go here. Take a look. It tries to break over this past high and rejects. And so that, again, makes me lack some conviction, unfortunately. And so then, again, I take an entry there at 510. I took profits back up at 520 because I knew, hey, look, it just found a seller when it tried to break out here, so I'm not going to even look for the move here. And I could have left some runners in this, sure. Should I have? Sure. But I'm just glad that I did what I had to do because we had that big wick off the high. Then, again, price breaks out higher, pulls back. Again, I sort of lack conviction through here. A little bit sloppy. Played it from 560, about 568 for a really small win. And that was that. Then this thing sort of knifes off the highs. You know, we like it all through here. I was then watching for a range to get put in here. We can see how it's trying to form a bit of a tightening wedge here, where I was watching it over here to try and get that move back to the upside, because you can see here it pulls back, big knife off the high, wick off the low. So I'm looking for a reversal back up into this range. So I take the entry on the next pullback, looking for this to quickly get squeezing back up through these levels over the moving averages. And you can see here it rejects. Look, it's previous high. And so what do? I just cut the rest at break even for another small win. And then from there, what I was looking for was for this to get reclaimed. And if this had broken above like this, I would have taken this here all day long for a big back up on the top of its range, and it would have looked absolutely tremendous. Beautiful drawing skills. But would have looked amazing, but it broke down. So made the right call there, traded that fairly well, and that was that. Moving on over to THAR, we'll look at here briefly. Already talked about it a little bit, but this was the big one yesterday that ran 400%. Played it fairly well yesterday, but yeah, it looked pretty good. I was taking the break at the highs here. You can see it broke out, pulled back to retest off the moving averages. I was trying to take it for a move back up into VWAP, and I got a nice little move here. You can see I actually played it myself here from about 505 to about 515. Not too shabby. Tried to take the pullback again. Got some trim, made it risk-free, sold the rest for break even. So very small green on this today. And that was pretty much the story behind that. AEMD took the break of VWAP, which I got no follow through. You can see here. Took it there on AEMD for the break of the highs and went ahead and took it for break even. Flat entirely, $0 on that. And I mean, pretty much the morning. I'm also very small green on Velo too. I mean, this thing traded like crap out of the bell. Thankfully, I traded it fairly well. Took a good entry off the pullback out of the bell once we crack over this area of supply from pre-market. Oh, wrong tool. And so as it breaks, I'm taking this pullback for the move higher. You can see here, I take the break, I get an out over the high. Thankfully, I had a good bit of profit cushion through here where I was able to take some good profit off that pullback. Really well. Try to take the pullback for the move back higher, and again, I just don't get it. This thing is sort of, it's pulled out from underneath. It's only up $119 on this freaking thing today. So it is what it is on this, but nonetheless, PTIX and GXAI definitely the most fruitful of the morning. And that's pretty much the recap of the day. So all in all, not a bad morning. Not a bad morning. Things are slowly but surely getting a bit cleaner again. I feel that I traded very well. The only thing is I'm looking forward to cleaner action going into tomorrow. And we do have the Jackson Hole speech with Powell tomorrow. So maybe that has an effect on price action into the weekend. Wait and see. But for right now, not a bad day today. Pretty good, pretty happy with it. Overall, a small green week. Monday and Wednesday were very choppy, kind of flat days. But, it's just one of those things, par for the course. Did really well on Tuesday. Pretty much matched that today. And looking forward to crushing it again tomorrow. That being said, make sure to claim your 7-day free trial down in the description below to get access to watch me trade these stocks in real time every single day and get watch list, alerts, education, chat room access, and so much more. And all that being said, I'll catch you guys next time.